Waiting to go live, and we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ask the Attorney. I am Maya Engel, live in our digital studio, joined by Mary Ann Wehr. She is an estate planning attorney here in Northern Michigan. Mary Ann, it's so good to see you. It's been a while since we've had one of our Ask the Attorney segments.
It's been a while. It's been a busy summer, a lot going on. I think we've had to cancel a couple of times. The spring seemed to be the same way. So we're not quite as, we were doing it twice a month religiously for 6 or so months, and we've dropped off a little bit. Yeah. So I think last month everyone was pretty tied up with coming into Cherry Festival and other things. And so this is a good time to restart and to restart on a a continuous basis. Maybe we'll do it the third or fourth week of the month and just plan on one. So love to have people's questions, but I know it's hard if you don't know who'll be here. So
yeah, but that's a good point. So if you're watching live right now, you can ask a question at any point in the comments, and we will stop our conversation and address some of those questions. If you also have any questions just at any point, you can always email our newsroom. Our email is just newsroom@upnorthlive.com, and maybe just put in the subject line, ask the attorney question, and we will get to those at our next time that we get together for these segments. But Mary Ann, today we're going to be talking about the question, what are you paying for? So this was your idea for this topic. So what exactly do you mean by this topic? If I've hired a lawyer for an estate plan, isn't that what I'm paying for?
Exactly. So the thing is people, most people won't come in contact with a lawyer in their life, right? So they don't know who they're dealing with or what they're dealing with a lawyer. They don't know what they should expect or what they shouldn't expect. And so, and there is a variety. And then the whole term, I think we've talked about it before, but the whole term estate planning, it's like, what is that? That's just crazy. What is that? And so people tend to think, it's a will. I need a will. Or people tend to I've heard of a trust. Maybe it's a trust. And really, the question that I have is, the prices vary so much between law firms, and what you're actually buying varies a lot too. So, are you just paying for documents? There are law firms that was my dog his ear leaning against something. So I'm sorry about that. But there are law firms that have good, solid documents that they reuse and repeat and reuse, but that's what they think of as, well, we'll give you one of our trusts. This is our trust. And the question is, are you just paying for documents? Because if you are, you might not be paying for the service that's really, I would call, exceptional legal work. And we'll talk about a couple of the situations that I've just come across that are saddening to me. But we in estate planning, our goal is to resolve issues, either incapacity issues or post-death issues, during your life. Well, you're here to help us. So if there's a question, it can be resolved. You can tell us how you'd like things to go. You can talk to us about a blended family, or if you have a beneficiary that you'd like some special care for, or maybe you do have a special needs person. Well, these documents off the shelf, or the documents, the online documents, just aren't going to do that. They're not going to get into the specific details. So, kind of the question that I think a person needs to ask, and I feel I have the answer to, is, do you want a set of documents that may not even fit you? Or do you really want a well planned out strategy for your estate? And that strategy includes, what are all of your assets and how do they fit into the strategy? Where do they go? How are they used during your life? Where do they go in your death? Do you want to set something aside for your spouse? And then when the spouse is done using it, because they've now passed away, then it goes to your beneficiaries. Do you want to set up just so many different questions, but all of these are very unique to certain situations, to a person's willingness. Sometimes people are like, I don't want to think about it all. Let's just do something very, very simple. But an estate plan is really strategically thought out. And that's why it's important to keep up to date or keep in touch with your estate planning lawyer. You really build a relationship. When things change, you should feel comfortable to say, hey, something just changed. I don't think I really planned for this. And to have that conversation. And that's what estate planning is. It's a strategically well thought out kind of collaboration between documents and assets and your wishes and your wants. And so you're not just buying documents, but sometimes you are. Sometimes, depending on where you've gone for legal advice, you are.
And this is something that we've talked about in the past, but when a lawyer tells me that they can help me with a trust, is that the same work that you do?
Maybe, I have no idea, so you will really, customers, looking for this line of work or for estate planning, there's a great variance in services that are offered. Just to, so when you say, I think I need a trust, well, until we peel back the onion and understand what your goals and objectives and your needs are, I don't know what that trust is. I don't know if you're talking to me about, I think I need a revocable living trust. And in fact, I say to myself, well, how do you know? How do you know until we talk about it? There are also asset protection trusts that are used for Medicaid pre-planning. So at a period in time where a couple may want to start setting aside some assets so that they're not counted in the event that they need Medicaid, there are asset protection trusts for that. There's trusts to protect the interest of blended families that do so very, in a very good way. So, we've talked about blended families, but you've got two families and, each mom and dad want to make sure that each other is taken care of and that the children are all taken care of in the way they want. So there are trusts that protect the interest of blended families. There are trusts that protect the interest of special needs families. There are trusts intended to support surviving spouses. So when you say, I need a trust, my mind goes, how do you know? And what kind of trust do you need?
Yeah.
And you're not going to get to that answer if you're you're not going to get to those questions and have the options provided to you if you're just using a lawyer that's like, oh, okay. I just spoke to some trust administrators today, and I am telling you, they were telling me horror stories of trusts that came in their door that people were like, hey, here's my parents' trust. And they start to look at it, and it has different names. Like it has names not even related to their family in the document. Oh, so that might have been a bad cut and paste, but so you really do have to be careful, be certain that you're working with, there's a lot of good estate planning attorneys out there. I think I'm one of them, but I think there's others, right? But you really do need to be sure that you're working with, the right lawyer, because you might even be thinking, I need a trust to support my family for generations. You might be thinking, I want to put my cottage in a trust. We've talked about that. So there's just a lot. That word is loaded.
Yeah.
So unless there's a proper amount of analysis and discussion, it is not fill in the blank, tell me the name of your, who you want to do this, and this, and then moving forward. It's just not. So my best suggestion, because all of these words, even what I'm saying to you right now, they're foreign. You don't generally work with a lawyer. We speak differently. We have different vernacular and we think differently, right? So we're a little bit on the other side of the world. And so it's hard. The words are also foreign. So really, I think that the best guidance I can give is to find a lawyer that's really passionate about this area of work, and that you get the sense they really want the best for you, and they're asking the questions and kind of probing and reflecting upon what your wishes are. But I just want you to be aware of the possibilities, that there are lawyers that are more, you think of this more as transactional, something once and done. I'll get it done for you. And then, that's it. It's all the same. But buying a trust off the shelf is just not personalized. And the real truth is, I think it's unlikely to work for you in the end, especially if buying it off the shelf it's not funded. It's not, you don't know anything about it. So, that's my kind of concern, or my wish for you, is that when you find an estate planning attorney, that's a good one. It's one that wants to really get everything done for you well.
Sure.
So
you mentioned there are a lot of different types of trust. So my trust might look a lot different from my neighbor's trust, and that's okay, right?
And that's okay. And the interesting, and maybe this goes a little bit more back to the last question, but I like to give examples. And I one time I have an example of, before somebody hires me, I think of them as a prospective client. And I talk to them a lot about what I can provide, what they might like, and before they even choose. Well, one time I had a prospective client who I thought was really an interesting person, and working with their situation might be quite complex. He called me a couple of days after we met, and he said, "Hey, I loved meeting you. That was great. But I found a lawyer who will do this for $650. And I'm like, "Really? Well, that's a great price. Maybe you should go for it." Because I was thinking, if he didn't see the value of what estate planning could do for him, he was just looking for something. But this gentleman owned multiple properties. So he had his residence and he had other various properties. He had 7 limited liability companies. So he had 7 businesses. He had very expensive toys, including an airplane.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I guess even anybody listening can say, what are the chances that his needs would be met with $650 plan? Right. And I'll tell you that on even the most basic plans, it is not uncommon for me to spend 20 or 25 hours working with the plan, making sure the drafting is right, that it fits everything, communicating with my client. Now, I do have a flat fee that I charge, and I'd really hate to calculate my hourly fee because it's probably not very much. But what I do know is that the value of the plans I return, just thousands of future, a reduction of thousands of dollars in future legal fees, whether it's avoiding probate or something we'll talk about a little bit later. But I really don't know, I'm proud of what I do, and I love finding things that people need, and I do it at a fixed price. But I can't imagine anyone who thought they could handle this person's complexity for $650. It just was a real strange thing to me.
Yeah.
So I said, good luck. Good luck. Sounds like a great price.
You haven't heard from that person since
then?
No,
I haven't heard. But, that kind of goes to, he very well, he wasn't trying to, he was like, I found a lawyer that will do the same thing you'll do for $650. And I think I told him 3,000 or something like that, so it wasn't like a crazy amount. And so, yeah, I haven't heard from him, and he's probably got his plan, and it may or it may not work for him, but I just wish him luck.
Right.
Yeah. So now you ask about trust looking different than your neighbors. They're not pulled off a shelf, or they shouldn't be. So it shouldn't be just substituting your name for your neighbor's name. And if it is, then it's really given very little thought to the content. And it might look like your neighbors if you went to the same lawyer who pulls things off the shelf. But I really spend a lot of time talking with trust administrators who talk to me about trusts that come in the door that are just cobbled up. And really, they think that in some cases, lawyers do just that, is that cut and paste names and replace other names. And they've seen documents with other family members from, like, strangers in the trust documents. So It happens. So my guidance to everyone out there is find someone with passion, but then, trust but verify, because maybe it's easy to make a typo as well. So, but trust but verify.
It's true. When it comes to the finish line of putting together a plan and whatnot, is that different for different lawyers?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is not uncommon. And again, the people that I talk to who do this trust administration for a living, in other words, they take whatever it was that I created, and then at the end, they're the ones kind of sorting through it and trying to make it work. And they say it's just not uncommon to have a family come in and say, well, my parents both are gone now, but they had a trust, so it should be really easy. Here's their trust, and I know this means we won't have to probate this. I know it means that the administration is easy and should be smooth. And then I'm learning the trust administrators look at it and they're like, well, yeah, there's a trust and it's beautifully written, but your mom and dad nor their lawyer ever put anything into it. So I know we've talked about funding a trust.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing has been put into that trust, either during your life or as a beneficiary, the trust is empty. It's really not there. And welcome to probate, right? And so this is something that's very common, and I've seen, old trusts coming into my office and new ones, where the lawyer provides a letter to the family and says, there you go, I've done my job. Now you must do the following. And the following just doesn't get done because sometimes it's just too confusing to do. It's too detailed. There's a lot of follow up. And so, I mean, that's why I think I've said in the past, my firm does trust funding. So when I quote a price, my price includes probably, maybe almost twice as much work as just somebody drafting. But I think it's really disappointing to me when people think everything's all taken care of. Mom and dad obviously tried to take care of everything really well, but it just didn't get across the finish line. So that's what I think my finish line, and others like me. I mean, I'm not alone, but I'm I'm a little rare. I think that the finish line for me is much further down the road than it is for some lawyers. And I think especially if you're working with a lawyer that pulls a document off the shelf, calls it a trust, moves forward, they're unlikely to do the trust funding for you.
So then how much does a client need to get involved? Can they trust their lawyer to do all the work, or do they need to participate?
Yeah, just like anything else that you're doing, if you had I think you talk to your doctor about prescriptions, like what's this going to do, and what are there any other options? And I think that's the same with lawyers. I recently, and this was surprising, but I recently had a mom and dad come into my office and they wanted some help with some items. One of them was quite ill, and that person owned quite a bit of property individually. So they wanted to make sure that property was going to be transferring to who they wanted to go to. In some cases to the spouse, in some cases to, a child, or one case a brother. So they really wanted to make sure that everything was going to be good. And then they were asking me to do a little bit of additional work. So I had to look at the prior deeds. When I looked at the prior, this is property. This is worth lots of money, right? I mean, if you're going to do anything right, do deeds right. But I looked at the prior deeds, and one where they thought they had taken everything out of a former owner's trust and put it into their trust, truly actually left a quarter of it in the other trust. Just because of the way the deed was written. Now, as a consumer, you wouldn't necessarily know that, right? But what that would have, sometimes I think it's fate that people find my office, but I went over it and I was like, oh my dear Lord. And so I talked to them about it. I also sent it to a colleague who's got even a lot more experience than I do in the area of property law. He's like, oh yeah, a quarter of it's in the other trust, so we designed a method of correcting it. He said to me, I'm not sure if you realize this, Mary Ann, but had you not caught this and it had gone forward, it would require a quiet deed action, which could have cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh, wow.
He said those are not simple, so at any rate, those are kind of the questions. It's hard to, question deeds, but that wasn't all that I found. There was a second deed. This person had multiple properties. Like I said, there was a second deed where they thought they had transferred to a brother. And then after the brother's passing, then on to someone else. And in fact, it never would have gotten to the brother. It would have gone on to the someone else's. So this deed didn't do what they thought it would do, but luckily it wouldn't have transferred until death. And so we're able to fix it. But these are things that just like fortuitously I come across. And when I can save someone thousands of dollars because they're just checking on this person, because they're checking on like, are we all set? We've got bad illness, but when I can save thousands of dollars, that's what I believe I do in my business on a daily basis. So when I come across situations where the prior work left it in limbo, I'm like, oh my word, how did this happen? How did, and what would the ramifications have been? And it really upsets me because I honestly believe that people should get what they paid for. And in this area, and I'm not saying every lawyer is going to make a mistake, but these were not just typos.
Right.
Yeah. And just to be clear, that was not a Northern Michigan lawyer that had done those deeds. I just want to say that too. But that's the kind of the kind of hole that people can get into if they don't go to a lawyer with expertise in this area. And then I think I previously talked about working with an elderly woman who had believed that she had done all she could do to plan for her special needs daughter. And she created a beautiful special needs trust. She had set in her mind, she had set money aside in her mind. She had bought a house for this daughter. The woman had wealth. And none of it was targeted to the trust. So that trust was going to completely fail because it had the money she thought she had set aside had different beneficiaries assigned to it, and you're not going to tug it away from somebody else.
Yeah.
The house wasn't so I guess the thing is, I'm just thankful I'm able to assist and find those items. But I think people need to be super cautious. This is not a place to bargain hunt. I mean, you can be budget efficient, but if you think a $650 lawyer is going to get what you need, and you have multiple properties, 7 companies, and and I don't know the type of lawyer that helped this woman, but she was checking with me to say, and she was getting ill, are we all set? I've been working on making sure my daughter, and I say to myself again, how did the universe send her to me? Because no, you're not all set, so
yeah.
I can't emphasize enough to work with experienced, knowledgeable lawyers. And, in this area, you need to know so many areas of law.
Yes, there is certainly a lot to it. So let's say someone, or let's say there's a firm that specializes in personal injury, but they may not specialize in estate planning then?
They may not. They may not. And sometimes a firm that specializes in personal injury will have a specific department that's very well versed, right? They might have a department of estate planning lawyers, and they're very, very well versed. But sometimes they just, lawyers will think, I can do that. I can just handle that. And so what is really important to understand is in my practice, I need to understand IRS code. I don't have to know everything about the tax code, but I need to know about the tax code where it impacts estates, right? I need
Mhm.
to know property law. We just talked about these deeds. When I saw the deeds, I literally sent them to a property expert to say, I can't be seeing what I'm seeing. And he's like, you're seeing it, you know? and and so you need to understand property law. Maybe you don't need to know everything about property law, but you certainly know if you're writing deeds in and out of trusts and moving property around, you need to know how to do that. There's trust law and probate law. When you're starting to talk about special needs trusts, like we had earlier in the year, we had a guest on who specializes in special needs. She needs to know Social Security regulations inside and out. These areas are just not for the, you got to know them more than just a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, and if a firm is believing they've got documents that cover everything, they probably don't. So a personal injury firm may do great if they've got a specialized department and they understand, and those lawyers understand the depth.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying that I think I put that question in here because personal injury lawyers are like an amazing group of lawyers. They're really good.
Yeah.
But they're really good at stuff I don't know anything about. And so I think I'm probably pretty good at stuff they might not know anything about, or as much as I do anyway. I could probably stumble through writing a complaint, but the court would probably dismiss it as soon as they saw it. It's just not my area of law.
Yeah.
Um,
So would you say the overall message is buyer beware?
In a way, I mean, I would say that the lawyers who are complying with Michigan's bar ethics, they really are not taking. They should not be taking on work that they're not prepared to take on.
Sure.
So the bar really takes great strides in this area and great pride, because we all know as lawyers, and the bar ethics code identifies, we all know people in the general public are not lawyers, and lawyers approach something differently, and the lawyers know the law. I have recently said to people, I've not stepped foot in a courtroom once, and they're like, really? I thought every lawyer did that, right? So people have and well, actually I was in I did a conference, like a settlement conference with a federal judge one time. I'm pretty proud of that, but I never was in his courtroom.
Right.
So, but so the bar makes sure through ethics that lawyers are taking on what they can take on, and they take great stride and great pride in that. And lawyers take great pride in doing the best job they can. But I think that sometimes, as we've talked about, those deeds, I can't explain. They were more than mistakes. And hopefully that lawyer didn't draft many, that's all I can say. But if it's your goal for easy, smooth transition of your property, and limiting the time it will take for distribution, avoiding probate, protecting some assets that you want to protect, planning for Medicaid, the real thing is just talk to the lawyer and get people have good sense, right? They know when they're talking to a lawyer who is like, well, I'm not sure, or one that can go deep into the topic. I would never say, it is law is also a field of competency, and we are held to if we take a case, we're held to knowing how to take care of it. So, but in a little bit of way, anything is buyer beware, and especially when you're dealing with topics that are foreign to you. Estate planning is foreign. Lawyers are foreign. We speak in weird language. I try not to, but I do.
You can't help it. You're a lawyer.
Yeah. And so the thing to keep in mind is the value that you're trying to get out of the service is really settling your estate before you die, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that everything is going to go smoothly. Often that's the goal. So without speaking, I really have great appreciation for lawyers, but I guess today was a tough day when I saw those deeds, and then had my more expert colleague, friend, say, yeah, you didn't miss anything there. It's pretty bad, so, and I'm so thankful that I was able to find that for this family, because mom would have had a mess after, or the remaining spouse would have had a mess and thought they were all taken care of.
Right. But it's kind of scary to think about all of the situations where that does happen then.
And I hope there's not many, right?
Yeah.
I hope that they're found. I think that somehow, especially when people know that they have a limited time to live, they kind of like become more concerned, like check this out at triple double time.
Right.
And I'll bet much of the time it's just fine. I just have tripped on a couple of very odd scenarios.
Yeah.
I am certainly not trying to suggest that all estate planning attorneys are going to make mistakes, because that's not true. Just, I want to bring to people's attention that not everyone is an estate planning attorney, I guess is what I'm really trying to say. And my guess is, now I don't know the attorney that drafted those deeds, but I know she was from Southeast Michigan, because you have to put your name on the deeds. My guess is maybe that wasn't her usual area of practice. So maybe she was doing it for a friend. I don't know the situation. So
right, but that's not super common. That's not normal to have.
I would hope not. Yeah, I would hope not. Yeah. Right. So, but just kind of letting people know, you've got to be selective with your attorney. You really do. It's not a trust is not a trust is not a trust. Every attorney service is not, you can't call an attorney's office and say, hey, how much do you charge for a trust? They don't know how to answer you. It's like, what do you need?
Right. More information.
Let's go, deeper into that question. And I know it's a common topic too, for people to call offices and say, I need a will. How much is that? When you're like, well, maybe you don't need a will. Maybe you need maybe if you knew of the options, you would choose something different. Maybe if you knew of the options, you would choose a will. But let's learn the options. And so it is it's a very, it's a unique area. And it's a unique area that, there's only a few areas, divorce being one of them, maybe bankruptcy being another, and estate planning, I suppose, are areas where you come in contact with a lawyer more than in your everyday life. So, but I am certainly not trying to say that there's a lot of bad lawyers out there. I'm just saying, be sure that when you're hiring an estate planning attorney, that's what you're doing.
Yes. Absolutely. All right, Mary Ann, thank you so much for all of this very important information. We are out of time. But before we go, I do want to remind everyone that we are going to be doing these Ask the Attorney segments again more regularly every month. So if you have any questions for Mary Ann at all, you can always send us an email to our newsroom. That is just newsroom@upnorthlive.com. And then at our next meeting, I will ask those to Mary Ann. You can also just contact Mary Ann directly if you would like. I have her email. No, it's your website and your phone number in the comment or in the caption for this live stream. So you can contact her as well.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. Well, it was nice seeing you again, Maya. And I hope that people enjoyed the topic, and I look forward to your questions.
Yes, we will see you in August. Thanks everyone for watching. Enjoy the rest of your night.